And good evening and welcome to Slooh. So I'm Helen Avery and I'm here every Sunday evening at 9, although not next week actually, but otherwise I'm here every Sunday at 9 and we talk about stories in the constellations, and if the telescopes are open we have a peek into those constellations while we're sharing stories, and tonight we have telescopes open, so I'm really excited. So if you are with us on our live cast page in the Space Situation Room, you'll see some tabs, and we have the Canary half meter is open. Oh my goodness. Just a glimpse of what you're going to get. And we also have Chile open, I believe. It was a minute ago. Ooh, what does that look like? Let's have a look. I know there was some cloud. No, we're good. We're all good. So this is great. We've got lots of things to look at tonight in Leo and lots to talk about. It's one of the oldest constellations that we know of. So plenty of stories. I sometimes feel it can be a bit all or nothing, and tonight we're all of it. So I know last week we were a bit low on objects. Tonight we are stuffed with objects. And because of the difference in geography of Chile and Canary Islands, they are running different schedules. So I've put the schedules on the discussions board. The most recent thread that talks about Leo triplets. Right at the bottom, scroll. It's quite a lengthy thread. Scroll all the way to the bottom. You'll find the updated schedule so you can follow along with us. So on the Canary half meter, this tab you'll see here, we're going to be going through some galaxies, and it's every 10 minutes, the half meter. So sort of a slower move through the galaxies, and we'll be talking mainly about them. Chile, it's kind of... There really isn't anything we see in one and not the other than the Spiderweb galaxy we're going to see in Chile and the stars, and that's what we're starting on now. So if you're in Chile now, you're looking at Regulus, which is the alpha star of Leo. And if you are in the Canary half meter, we've got high winds, so we'll see how this goes. But this is actually the Leo triplet. So that would be the hamburger galaxy at the top, and then M66 and M65 down below, I believe, and then that's a star in the middle. But as Paul explained earlier, I don't know if you listened to him, we've had so much snow and ice. It's just a miracle to even do a bit of an override and get this one open for us tonight. So we'll keep an eye on that, and hopefully we'll see some of these galaxies. But as I say, they're set up in Chile as well, so hopefully we'll catch something. So before we get going, just kind of wanted to orient ourselves as to where Leo is in the sky. So here we go. I don't know if you can see this, hopefully you can. It is a picture that I've taken of a book because this was the best I could find actually that sort of showed this. And Paul just told me we've got some heavy haze actually in Canary ones, so we normally see much clearer than this. It's just a miracle we have it open, so I think we're just lucky to see anything tonight. But as you can see, Leo is sort of in the left middle. There is our beloved Leo, our lion. Kind of looks like a lion sat down perhaps. This sickle shape that's on the right, the sickle it's called, although I can't find any stories that refer to this ever being seen as a sickle. Interestingly, I thought the Druids would, but they haven't. This is like its head. And so this is our Leo, and it's obviously near Cancer. Last week we looked over to the right for Canis Minor, and down at the bottom towards the right, Sirius, Canis Major, Monoceros we've checked out, the Unicorn, we've got Orion just to the right, lower right, we've got Gemini up above. And if we go all the way over to the left, you'll see Coma Berenices, which we talked about as formerly having been the tuft of the tail of Leo. Leo is a big constellation, and actually it used to be much bigger. These little stars to kind of the right of the sickle in between Cancer and Leo, they actually, I believe they belong to Cancer, but they used to be sort of much bigger part of the head, and some things I read said that Cancer actually, some other stars in Cancer sort of were part of Leo, which I'm not too sure about because Cancer was an very early constellation too. But certainly those stars in between, you can see there, that do belong to Cancer, I think, used to belong to Leo. And Coma Berenices apparently used to belong to Leo. But then, as we remember, that the Queen cut off her hair and it got stolen. So some bright spark had to come up with a story as to where it went, and they said it was here. They took the tuft of Leo's tail and gave it to Queen Berenice's. So now we're just left with this constellation of Leo. And then I wanted to point out the stars. Let's have a look. Here we go. Just in a bit more detail. So we're looking at Regulus right now in Chile. And Regulus, if you sort of look, is at the bottom of the sickle. So that's the heart of the lion. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Algebra, we're also going to be popping into next on Chile. That's kind of, lower down in the sickle. You can sort of see it there. Algebra, it means forehead, but it actually is kind of like the mane. And then if you sort of come over to the left, right at the end of the tail, is Denebula. That's the beta star. And that star we're going to be looking at as well tonight. So these three main stars this evening that we're going to focus on. Algebra is a double star, so I'm excited to look at that. And actually, Regulus, I don't know if we can see this in Chile right now. Let me just switch tabs. Is a multiple star system. And it's got like a bluey white tint to it. I don't know if that colour's coming through there. Okay, I'm just checking back on the Canary half meter, see how we're doing. Not bad at all. Beautiful to see these galaxies, yeah, and that's that hamburger up the top. So, before we get going, I thought maybe let's talk about this Leo triplet. We're going to see it a bit later, so I just kind of wanted to talk about that. And if we can sort of see two here in the Canary half meter, but maybe what I'll do is I plan this a bit later, but maybe I'll do here we go. One of our members very kindly, many of our members very kindly share their images in case we get rained out or something. So this one is from Keith. If looking at the main screen, or if you're on YouTube. And so you can see here these three galaxies that are called the Leo triplet. And Leo has so many galaxies. It's really exciting. If you remember from, goodness, I'm going to get this wrong. From Coma Berenices, it was just stuffed of galaxies. And in this whole region, the Virgo cluster, there was the Coma cluster, and then there's these sort of there's a Leo group that we'll be looking at later as well, but there's this lovely Leo triplet. So let me tell you a couple of things about these, and we are zooming in a little bit later in Chile, so stay with us if you want a bit of a closer up shot of the Hamburger galaxy, which we'll look at later. So the Hamburger galaxy, as I mentioned, is this one in the top left-hand corner, and it's about 300,000 light years across. So it's bigger than our galaxy, which is about 100,000 light years across. And this is about 35 million light years away, as they all kind of are in this triplet. So does it look like a hamburger to you? To me, it's more of a, I don't know, fried egg or something. But it does have the name, the Hamburger galaxy. And then sort of coming down into M65 in the lower right. This was discovered by Charles Messier in 1780, this particular spiral galaxy. And if you're following Dr. Paige Godfrey's tuning fork of collecting the different types of galaxies that make up Hubble's fork, I think it was called, this will be a great time to keep your to take some snaps and fill up that fork, because we've got lots of different types of galaxies for that spectrum. So this is an SA spiral 65, and then M66 we've we've got, this is an intermediate spiral galaxy, so it's sort of in between a barred spiral and a spiral, and you can really see some beautiful detail on this particular image. The M66 and M65 are similar to the Milky Way. They're about 100,000 light years across. So a bit of info on those, and as I say, you might be able to see them in the Canary half meter. Yeah, you can certainly see the hamburger and M65, and we're sort of catching the top of M66. Lovely. But we'll be coming back to these and seeing them from Chile, so you'll get a sense of how they look in different telescopes, and as they will be having a bit of a closer look at M66 and the Hamburger Galaxy. And if you're interested, on our Facebook page, I used an image shared by one member, Juan Pueblo, of M66, and it's beautiful. You really see the colour in it, so a real treat. So just popping over to Chile Widefield. Here we go. So this should now be our Jaber. So I'm going to go with that. That's what it is. So our Jaber, as I mentioned, is it's called the forehead, but it's actually the mane of the line, and this is about 130 light years away. So I'm just going to pull up the stars again on the main page. So thank you, Keith, for those. That was great. Yeah, so you can see here our Jaber and Nebulous. So they are very different distances, even though they're part of the same constellation. So Regulus is about 77 light years away. Got our Jaber's about 130, and Nebula is only 35 light years away. And our Jaber is another double. I'm not sure if it's coming through on Chile. Let's have a look. Okay, not seeing it so much, but there we are. And the nebula that we're going to come on to next, I just wanted to pull this up. This is the Diamond Virgo, the Diamond of Virgo, which is kind of fun if you're looking for like a, we did our winter circle, but you could do the Diamond of Virgo. And this is the nebula. You can see is the right star here of the diamond. And then that joins up with Canis Venatici, Corcaroli, Arcturus, and Spica in Virgo, and that's called the Diamond of Virgo. So that's a fun quest if you wanted to do that. Pick up all those 4 stars, but just wanted to show you that the nebula is does make up part of this sort of other asterism. But we're here for some stories, so let's press on with those. So man and lion, it's a relationship that is so interesting and is way beyond what we can even imagine. For example, this this wonderful carving that we're looking at right now on the livecast page, I just wanted to talk a bit about that. So in 1939, if you can imagine, in a cave in Germany, this figurine was found, and it's the body of like a man, and it's a lion head. And several other similar sort of pieces with its lion man were found around this area in Germany. And this is about, they think, 35,000 to 40,000 years old. And it is carved out of a woolly mammoth tooth, if you can believe this, using a flint stone knife. It's unbelievable. But when we think, sometimes when we talk about Leo, we skip to the Sphinxes. But, that's perhaps about 11,000 years ago, perhaps. But this kind of shows us that our relationship with lions has been in existence for just years and years. In fact, some of the prehistoric paintings that are around this kind of time sort of show lions. So although there are only 20,000 odd lions left in the world today, if you can believe that, there were so many more and so many fewer people that it really was more of a sort of about, I don't want to say a balanced relationship, but they were much more prolific. Sort of man and lion interacted a lot more, and you can imagine seeing a lion, the strength of a lion and this sort of golden mane. It must have appeared really sort of mystical and divine, which is sadly something we don't, some of us do, but we've kind of lost touch with that, which is why we've hunted them almost out of existence, really. But back in the day, they were obviously very seen as almost like gods or goddesses. So I was thrilled to sort of show you this. And then I wanted to add, this is Sekhmet. So this is a goddess, an Egyptian goddess, an early Egyptian goddess. So again, would have been around the time of the Sphinxes as well. And Sekhmet was like a goddess protector. But look how similar they are. So this is like, I think this one's about 6,000 years old, maybe 4,000 years old, this particular statue. But they're so similar, and this one on the right is 35 to 40,000 years old. So it's just amazing, the longevity of this kind of, I don't know if you want to call it an archetype of lion and man. Really phenomenal. So we kind of sort of know that this was a constellation in early Egypt, so we consider it one of the oldest. But I would hazard a guess by looking, at this for as an example, that it was long before people were seeing a lion in the sky. They saw their most important things in the stars. So I'm sure Leo is like one of our absolute earliest constellations. But sort of in terms of records, we kind of date back, and say, to the Egyptians. So I don't want to keep rabbiting on and miss what's happening in the telescope. So I'm just going to pause and have a look at where we are. So now we're looking at Denebola. Oh, and that looks great. And in the Canary half meter, I believe we will be switching over to some interacting galaxies. Fantastic. We've got an elliptical galaxy here interacting with a spiral galaxy. This looks great. So we'll talk a bit more about this. We've got 10 minutes, if you remember, on this, and on the half meter. So why was the line so important to the Egyptians? Well, we don't know. I'm assuming for the same reasons it was important to the people 35,000 years ago. But in particular, what happened was that, we talked last week about Sirius was seen, it sort of disappeared, and then it rose just before dawn, just before the time that the Nile would flood. Well, Leo, the constellation, the sun was in Leo when the Nile flooded. It was like the hottest time, if you remember, and then the Nile flooded. But when we say, if you're a Leo, it means the sun was in your sign. Sun was in Leo when you were born. So at the time of that period where the Nile was going to flood, the Egyptians sort of saw maybe that the sun was eaten by this constellation, the lion. And so the reason we think they saw the lion in this particular set of stars was because on all the gates that opened the canals, so when the Nile was about to flood, they could irrigate the land. On those gates were lions. So it's thought that the Egyptians obviously connected this idea that the Nile was flooding had something to do with the lion, and it just so happened that the sun was in this constellation, which is why we think they saw Leo in that. And if you look also on like the Dendera zodiac, the lion is one of the most obvious ones there. So as I say, it's like one of those we can kind of say for sure, for thousands of years, people have been seeing a lion in this particular group of stars. So really, really wonderful. Okay, so I don't want to miss just sharing a couple of things about what we're seeing here. So yes, the Canary half meter is what I'm looking at this. So we've got a dwarf elliptical interacting with a spiral galaxy. So you can see the elliptical is the one slightly higher. They're listed in the Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies, as were our Leo triplet actually, which just to me is just like such an amazing name for for a book. What do you call it? Like a record of the galaxies, the Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies. So these are about 50 million light years away, and they're kind of colliding with each other, which we sort of now know is a fairly normal course in the evolution of galaxies. Our own Milky Way galaxy is going to collide with the Andromeda galaxy eventually, the spiral galaxy, the one underneath, is about 90,000 light years across. So again, a similar size to the Milky Way, and that has apparently a supermassive black hole. So it's pretty fun. Okay, we'll come back to that later. I was going to talk a little bit more about the Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies, but I think I will save that for a little bit later. And just chopping back to Chile. How are we doing? So Chile, we should be getting to our second triplet. We'll see how that goes. If not, I've got some images I can share a bit later towards the end. So keeping an eye on those, or enjoying the Canary half meter of our interacting galaxies. So I talked a little bit about the Sphinx. That we think, the constellation Leo looks a bit like a Sphinx. And this combination of man and lion has really been around a long time now. In Giza, for example, and I'll just bring this up on the main page. Let's have a look. Here we go. Some pictures of Sphinx. Okay, so you can see they're quite different. Some have wings, some have a woman's head, and some have a man's head. So it's thought that initially it was seen as a goddess like Sekhmet. So it would have had a woman's head and this lion's body, the Sphinx. And then as things happen and pharaohs became very powerful, they wanted to sort of be seen as having this connection with Sekhmet and with the lion. And so they replaced the head of Sekhmet with whoever the pharaoh was at the time. They put his head on it. So this one on the right is the one in Giza. And it's thought this one's about 2,500 BCE and connected to his name was Pharaoh Khafre. But what I find really fascinating about the star Regulus, just coming back to this for a moment. So Regulus was called it's one of the royal stars, and it's sort of gone under the name. Copernicus actually gave it the name Regulus. The Greeks knew it as Rex, and before that it was known as the King, the Mighty One. In India it's known as the Mighty One, but it's always kind of been known as this king kind of leading star. And it would have signalled before, precession of equinoxes, it would have signalled the summer solstice, Regulus. So the other stars in the kind of royal family of stars were Aldebaran in Taurus, which would have been seen at the time of the spring equinox, and Antares in Scorpius, that would have been seen at the time of the fall equinox, and let me get this right, Fomalhaut in Aquarius, or the southern fish, which would have been seen at the time of the winter solstice. Now, that constellation wasn't always visible further north you went, Aquarius and the southern fish. So sometimes that was replaced with the star Altair in the constellation Aquila, the eagle. So if you just bear with me for a moment, we've got an eagle, we've got a lion, we've got a bull, and we've got a scorpion. Now, the winter solstice and the summer solstice would have been either a lion and an eagle, or they would have been a lion and a woman bearing water. So I just wanted to point that out because I kind of feel like that's, I mean, we just don't know, but when we're looking at the Sphinx, when we're looking at some of the depictions of the Sphinx with the wings, and this one's a Greek depiction on the left where it's clearly a woman's head. I sort of, and it's actually got a serpent for a tail there. And some depictions have a scorpion tail of like a Sphinx. I just think it's really interesting that we have these 4 stars that were considered of utmost importance. And in fact, if you look, even in the Bible, it mentions the ox, the lion, the man. I can't remember what the other one is. It might have been the eagle. I'm not sure. The ox, the man, lion. Yeah, maybe it was the eagle. I can't remember. But they're mentioned over and over again, and we see them in these kind of statues, in carvings, in drawings, this merging of these 4 creatures. And the Sphinx, sometimes has wings, sometimes it doesn't, but always has a lion's body, sometimes with this female head. So while it was really important to the pharaohs, it also was sort of adopted by the Greeks, the Sphinx. And it was said to have guarded, the Sphinx was said to have guarded like the Greek city of Thebes. And in Egyptian times, the Sphinx was kind of very benevolent, although fierce. But the Greeks, the Sphinx was really kind of merciless almost. So if you know the stories of the Sphinx, that it would ask you a riddle, would ask travelers a riddle if they wanted to pass by. So there are a couple of riddles that it said that the Sphinx would ask. One was the one she asked Oedipus in one of the many, many Oedipus myths. And that was, which creature has one voice and yet becomes 4-footed and 2-footed and 3-footed? So this is quite a famous riddle. And this is the answer is man, who crawls on all 4s as a baby and then walks on 2 feet as an adult and then uses a walking stick in old age. So that seems like a more modern riddle, but there is one that's seen to be a really ancient riddle that was said to be asked by the Sphinxes, and that is, there are 2 sisters, one gives birth to the other, and she in turn gives birth to the first. Who are they? And the answer is day and night. But we don't just see the Sphinx in sort of Egypt and Greece and Rome. It's also found in South India. It's known as Purushamriga, the human beast. Buddhist stupas and protectors. So it kind of lives on even today. There was a sort of died out in Europe. There was a bit of a resurgence around the 1500s in art. And then it went away again. But you can certainly see this sort of Sphinx-like creatures as lion protector across Southeast Asia. So I just want to pop back. Wow. Okay. Here in the Canary half meter. Where are we? Okay. So we have M105. We have NGC 3384 nearby. Looks like we've got something else there too. So maybe that's M95. Let's have a look what I've got here. Yeah. So it's hazy, but I'm just grateful that we can see it at all. So this is the Leo 1 group, also known as the M96 group, and these were discovered by the French astronomer Pierre Méchain. So we've got M105, which is an elliptical, so I'm guessing the most spherical of those all is the one in the middle. And that's an older galaxy and hasn't got much in the way of star formation. And then 3382 is a lenticular, so I'm guessing, just looking at it, that is the one to the left, upper left. And that looks like a lenticular galaxy to me. And that's about 38 million light years away. And they actually had a supernova in 2012. And the other would be M96, which is an intermediate spiral galaxy. It's about 35 million light years away. So I'm thinking that is the barred spiral underneath. Well, no, now it's coming through. I'm not sure. But I know we have got a picture that shows us those taken by Member later, so I'll pull that up in a bit. But lovely, they look kind of like hazy blobs right now, but I'm just happy we're getting to see them. Over in Chile, what have we got? Oh, fantastic. So what are we on? 9:30. So this is the S galaxy, NGC 2903. So this is a barred spiral. It's about 30 million light years away, and it was discovered by Herschel. Yeah. So all about galaxies. Fantastic. Okay. But back to our stories of like interesting beasts. So I'm just going to cancel these out and share a few more with you from this whole sort of idea that we've been merging various parts of eagles and lions and man and bull for a very long time. So here's, you can see the griffin on the upper right. This is actually a coat of arms of a German state or a German town. And actually there's a lot of griffin history in Germany around sort of the 1100s and 1200s. Certain towns were formed because it was said griffins led them there. Really interesting, the relationship with griffins and that part of the world. This one down the bottom is more like a peacock, isn't it? That too is supposed to be a griffin, and this is from Crete, this particular one. Let me see, these have some funny names, and let's make sure I get these names right. Okay. I'm not going to find I cannot tell you how many sheets of paper I have tonight. It's just so much going on because there's so many objects. Right, bear with me. Okay. So it's something called a manticore. Is the two pictures on the left, the one at the bottom and the one at the top, is a manticore. It's supposed to be a man's head, a bit weird, with a lion's body and some sort of weird scorpion type tail. So again, we're sort of similar to this representation of these four royal stars, perhaps, or just sort of a riffing on this kind of Sphinx griffin type thing. And that was, they're Persian and dates back to like thousands of years. Probably, I think about 4,000 years, 5,000 years ago, that this kind of creature was said. It was never said to exist, but there was like this archetype of this particular creature. And the one in the top middle is sort of very popular, and you can see it sort of has bull type legs, and then there's winged and sort of lion-ish, and then a man's head. So anyway, I'm kind of fascinated by it. Wow, look at this color coming in now in Chile of our S galaxy. Fantastic. Really wonderful. Great. Okay. So I've so much to share with you. I don't think we're going to get through it all tonight. I'm looking at the time already. So maybe we'll just share a couple of the more familiar stories that we have on of Leo. So that it's always helpful when we hear the stories, because then we can remember where they are in the sky. We can learn them sort of from the objects around them. So the main story we all kind of know is the story of Heracles, or Hercules as he became to the Romans, and the Nemean lion. So the Nemean lion was, I don't give you misinformation. So the Nemean lion was, according to the Greeks, like a lion who lived on the moon and then fell to earth in a falling star and landed in a place called Nemea. But its golden fur was like impervious to weapons, and it spent its time terrorizing maidens and kidnapping them. So one of very first of Heracles' labours to sort of repent for his actions, which weren't his own fault, but that's a different story, was to slay this Nemean lion. So the story goes that he went and stayed with a shepherd named Melorcus and told him that he was going to kill the lion. And Melorcus offers to sacrifice an animal to Zeus to pray for him, but Hercules says, no, wait a month and then we'll do it together. He's sort of confident that they can do it together, that he'll come back from slaying this lion. So Heracles goes in search for this lion and shoots an arrow at it, but it's no use because it's got such this strong fur. It just ricochets off. So he rethinks his strategy, and then he tracks the lion to its cave and clubs it. There's the club in this picture here, to stun it. And then they wrestle together. If you can imagine wrestling with a lion, 500-pound lion. And then finally the Heracles kind of wraps his arm around the lion's neck and strangles the creature to death. And then the maidens were all free. And Athena, the goddess of like war, advises Heracles to skin the lion using one of its own claws. So he does that, and then he goes back to Melorcus and sacrifices an animal in honor of Zeus together with the shepherd. And then he takes this big lion skin and goes to the king to give it to him as a trophy. But the king, who just didn't believe Heracles would get that far, is like terrified and refuses to meet him. So he says that he can just display this lion skin outside the city gates. So Zeus, because they've honored him, actually takes the lion's skin and places it in the night sky for all to see. Or it takes the lion, and puts it in the night sky for all to see. So according to the Greeks and the Romans, the lion that we're looking at in the night sky in Leo is actually this Nemean lion. And Heracles, or Hercules, we'll look at his constellation later on. He's depicted as wearing this lion skin. So that was one of the stories of this wonderful constellation, the one we're probably most familiar with, rather than, although I like to kind of see it as the Sphinx in the sky. So just checking back in, I don't want to miss anything. Okay, where are we? So we're on 9:38. What are we looking at? We are looking at the Spiderweb galaxy, NGC 3521. This is a really, really beautiful galaxy, and it gets overlooked a little bit, but it's a real stunner. I don't want to miss the half telescope. What have we got here? Wow, look at that in the Canary half meter. What did I say? We are 9:38. This is M95. Okay, so I'll just fill you in a little bit on these. Hoping to fill you in. There we go. So if you're looking at Chile and looking at the Spiderweb galaxy, it's a spiral, as you can see, and that's again 35 million light years away. And it's sort of, as I say, it gets overlooked, but it's 50,000 light years across, so it's half the size of the Milky Way. But it's got a lot of interesting things in it. If you look at a couple of the NASA pictures, it's like these bubbles inside it. I couldn't find why we call it the Spiderweb. If you know, I would love to. I'd love to hear why that is. Okay, and back on the Canary half meter. What I said one was M95. And so, yeah, we've talked about this one. This was the barred spiral that had the supernova in 2012. Okay. So, how are we doing? Oh, my Lord. Is that really the time? Okay. I've got a couple of stories and maybe we won't have time for all of them. We will see. We will see. Okay. One of the other stories that is kind of known to be related to Leo, this constellation, is the one of Thisbe and Pyramus, and it inspired Romeo and Juliet. So it's not to be overlooked, although some people say it wasn't really to do with this constellation, but I'll tell you why I think it's a nice story to hear a little bit later. So what happened was that so Ovid's is the oldest surviving version of this story, but it's a story told again and again and again, and so it's published in the year 8. And it's that this handsome Pyramus and the lovely Thisbe live in the ancient city of Babylon, where their families have been neighbours all their lives. And as they grow up, they totally fall for each other. But the families hate each other. And so the two are not allowed to get married. It's a very Romeo and Juliet. But of course, this makes Pyramus and Thisbe like each other even more. And they find this crack in the wall that separates their houses and whisper sweet nothings as often as they can. And eventually, they make a plan to elope. So they plan to sneak out their houses and meet at the tomb of someone called Ninus, and to meet specifically under a mulberry tree that grows inside the tomb. So Thisbe, she gets there first, and she just can't wait to be Pyramus's wife. She's so excited, and she sure hopes nothing terrible is going to happen. But just then a lioness arrives, and Thisbe screams and runs away, but she leaves her shawl behind her under the mulberry tree. We can guess what's going to happen. So the lioness goes over and starts tearing it up with its bloodied jaws from the kill it just had before. At which point Pyramus shows up. Where has he been? And he sees this lioness munching on this bloody shawl and assumes the worst, that Thisbe has been devoured. So overcome with grief, he stabs himself in the heart with a sword, and his blood spurts onto the white berries of the mulberry tree. And then Thisbe comes back and sees Pyramus is dead. So she takes his sword and she kills herself too, and her blood spurts onto the white berries of the mulberry tree. And so to this day we say that all mulberries are stained red in honour of the tragic love of Pyramus and Thisbe. However, some say that if we want to link this to the constellations, that Thisbe's shawl is similar to the veil that was seen in either the constellation Cancer, if you remember we talked about the veil that was in there, or is said to be Coma Berenice's, that constellation. And that this was her shawl and not Queen Berenice's hair after all. So it's just some nice ways of sort of remembering where Leo is in the sky. One of the things I didn't also mention was the this tale of sort of overcoming the lion, sort of going back to the story of Heracles, is just repeated over and over again. Like we see it in the Bible with Daniel overcomes the lion with the help of an angel. You have Samson who kills a lion, and out of that lion he finds a beehive in the middle of the lion, and he eats the honey from that. But that reminded me of the beehive cluster, which is in Cancer, which isn't too far away. So I just thought, though these two sort of tales you could kind of weave in to more than just Leo. If you're looking up the sky and guiding, I don't know, your friends or children or something like that, you could make up a whole story and bring in Coma Berenice's, or bring in Cancer too nearby. So I'm glad I got to share those. Again, just zipping back to see I'm just so thrilled we can see some things in the telescopes tonight. So what have we got in Chile Widefield at the moment? What are we on at 9:44? Let's have a look. Okay, we're still on the Spiderweb. galaxy, and we're moving into, in a moment, the Leo triplet. So be interesting to compare that to what we saw at the beginning over in T1. And in the Canary half meter, we should be going into, maybe it's a little early, NGC 2905, which is within the ring of the S galaxy, and then it's going to switch over at 9 in 10 minutes time to the S galaxy. If you wanted to catch that. Okie doke. All right. So, but then, we're always sharing these Greek stories, the Egyptian stories, especially with these ones that we have like old records of. But I wanted to share an entirely different story with you about Leo. And that is one that I'm about to try and find my notes to share with you. This is quite a fun one. We're working 2 different telescopes with different missions going while trying to share some stories. So, here we go. So it's a story from the Pueblo people that has Leo in it, and it's entirely different. But one of the things I liked about it is it's just a lovely story, but it echoes the story of Moses, and I actually prefer this Pueblo story. But it kind of showed me some of the things that Leo shows us, that these stories just keep coming up over and over again. You know, the man who overcomes a lion, this fusing of these most important animals into sort of different types of beings, whether it's griffins or sphinxes, that they're mentioned in all different stories and religious stories, but also like folk tales, and like even some of the stories, I think it was a story of Daniel actually, where he is thrown into the lion pit, but then does get saved by an angel and doesn't get eaten by the lions. It was said to be an old Babylonian folk tale that was adopted into the Hebrew Bible. So that just for some reason we have just been for thousands and thousands of years retelling these same tales, man overcoming beast, or hopefully, well, we're slowing down on that story now because of conservation. Maybe we're a little less into looking heroic by killing large animals with guns. So here, see what you think about this Pueblo story echoing the story of Moses. But I think it's lovely, and I love it because we can see it in the stars. So this was found, and this is courtesy of Stars of the First People by Dorcas Miller, is the book. But she shares that this tale was from a woman called Pablita Velarde from San Ildefonso, recorded this in 1960. So Long Sash is Orion. The endless trail in the tale is the Milky Way, and the others will become clear. So Long Sash was a brave and wise warrior, and the people trusted him very much. They turned to him when year after year their villages were destroyed and warriors were killed by neighbouring tribes. They said to Long Sash, "Take us to a land where we may live in peace." And he said, "The journey is going to be very difficult. We will have very little food, and we have to travel a long way on the endless trail. We must go into a land that I haven't seen. Are you willing to endure the hardships?" The people assured him that they wanted to go and packed their few belongings. They began the long journey. Long Sash had to instruct them in how to hunt and make clothes, as they had little to eat or wear. Babies were born and old people died. Quarrels broke out, and there was much fighting. Long Sash halted and said, "We cannot continue. There is violence among you. You do each other more harm than your enemies ever did. We will rest here. There are women whose time is due. Let them give birth, and then you can choose whether you want to follow me or go another way." they stopped by two bright stars, now called the place of decision. So you can see here that is the two stars, Castor and Pollux. So I love this, that you can tell this tale while looking up at the sky at night. So even today, says Pablito Velarde, people look to these stars when making important decisions. Wonderful. So if you have something you need to decide, have a look up tonight at Gemini if you can, and maybe it will help you. But after the people have rested, they said, you know what, we do want to come with you. They've made their decision. And Long Sash watched closely to see if what they said was true, and he believed them, and they again set out on the endless trail. But Long Sash was growing old and tired and doubtful. He had never been in this land, and he was unsure of which way to go. He asked for a sign. He closed his eyes, and when he awoke, he told the people that he had been given many promises. He'd had a vision. And he'd been told that there was no need to doubt, that they had completed the most difficult part of the trip. And he said there are times in each person's life when there is a place of doubt, but you must always seek help from the above persons when this happens. So he laid his headdress down to mark the place of doubt and to remind people where they can seek guidance when they need it. So if you are in need of guidance, then the place to look up in the night sky is to the constellation Cancer, which is actually Long Sash's headdress to the Pueblo people. And that would be the place of doubt. And with this rest and Long Sash's new strength, people stopped quarrelling and were kinder to each other. And as they continued on, two young men made like a sledge to carry not only their own belongings, but also those of an old woman. And this is the 3 stars of helpfulness. And all of the people carried on continued on the trail, and at last came to the end of their journey. So these 3 stars of helpfulness are the 3 stars in Leo, which is just lovely. So when we're looking up at Leo, we can see this either the 3 people, the 2 guys and the old woman, or this kind of sledge that was used to carry their equipment. And I wasn't sure, let me just pull this up, if whether we're looking at the 3 stars that are Denebola, Trust and Zuma here, or maybe, this is what my opinion would be, it's Denebola, Aljaba and Regulus. Oh, hello. There we go. So I just loved a really totally different story from such a different part of the world with all different types of characters, away from our usual Egyptians and Greeks. So zipping back to see, wow, oh my God, look at that in the Canary half meter. Oh my goodness. Goodness, that is it's supposed to be, well, it's the S galaxy, and I put in to see it's part of the S galaxy, but we'll see what that's, the S galaxy is up next, so I just want to see what the difference is between those. Wow, that is really amazing. Oh, that's so beautiful. Great. So yeah, it's a barred spiral. It's only 20 million light years away, actually. The S galaxy, and it's really popular. It's near. It's popular with astronomers because you can see it pretty clearly. Wow, that's so beautiful. And it's near the top of the lion's head. Messi actually completely missed this one. Wonderful, great. And just nipping back to Chile for a second. So our final with Chile is going to be the Hamburger galaxy, which should be coming in about a minute's time. Just lovely. So a really rich constellation, as you can see, and I've been a bit all over the place with the sort of stories, just because there are just so many to share with, and I just didn't want to miss the chance for us to look at these objects through the telescopes, because who knows what we're getting in winter, and it's been a while since we were able to see some of these deep sky objects. So I'm glad that we did. But I didn't get to share a lot about the griffin, but just the idea of the winter solstice and the summer solstice being the lion and the eagle, and that being represented in the griffin, really sort of captured my imagination. And if you read stories about the griffin, it's deeply connected to gold, and it's sort of its eggs are made of gold, and it steals gold and it protects gold. So a lot of people say that's like it's this connection to the sun. It's just another type of solar deity, or was a mythical beast, but based off of a solar cult, which a lot sort of the Egyptians moved into. And the idea of the royal stars of Regulus being so important, because it's also on the ecliptic, and these ideas of man overcoming beasts, but also our connection to them dating back thousands of years. So much that we sort of deified man and lion together. So just really, really juicy. And then, of course, this sort of completely different story coming back to the Pueblo. So, my apologies again. we've skipped around a bit. But hopefully you've been inspired by Leo this evening. And I did put up some other suggested missions and also the whole schedule. So if you want to go back and book some missions with Slooh, you could do that and have a deeper look. Maybe get the Virgo diamond, perhaps. Wow, yeah. So this is. I'm just looking at the Canary half meter. Oh, how lovely! We can end on this. This S galaxy, and the color will come in. This is here till 10:05, so I'll be gone by then. But you can get to sort of linger and look at it. I don't think we have time to. Well, we could do. I've got a couple of minutes, so maybe we'll just. I love to show members photos, images, because I'm so grateful that they share them. But also I think it's just lovely to see what our members can do with our telescope. So maybe I'll just run through those. Of course, feel free to just stay hanging out in the S Galaxy. But if you're on the main page, here's a couple. This is M95. It's from Peter. Just amazing. Peter also shared this one, this little kind of triple, which is beautiful. Which we looked at earlier, actually, and they weren't. I couldn't work out which was which, but here they all are. As you can see, sort of this elliptical galaxy, then the lenticular, and then the spiral. I had it right! Hurrah! Okay. Lewis took some different kinds of triplets. This is a whole different triplet. It's great. And this is from Mario. This is the S Galaxy that we're looking at. So fantastic. A couple of and there was a couple of things I wanted to point out that just for your own research, because I don't have time to share. One is if you want to check out the cosmic horseshoe. Yes, this is in Leo. It's pretty amazing. Not something we can capture at Slooh, but if you're interested, I would definitely go and have a look at that, and I might put something up in Illuminations about it because I don't have time to talk about it now. The cosmic horseshoe, it's kind of like it's really fun to think about. And also the Leo ring. If you look on the science log, I think, and scroll along, it was just down under the screens, you'll be able to read about the Leo ring and Illuminations, and it's pretty mind-blowing. So I definitely check that out. It's sort of an intergalactic pile-up is the story of the Leo ring. So there is a lot. I mean, we could have probably done this over 2 weeks, but we didn't. So hopefully you've got a taste of the wonder of Leo in so many levels. So that's it from me. Here we go. I'll leave you with this S galaxy till 10:05 on the Canary half meter. Thrilled that we got to see this. I say I'm away next week, and then we'll be back the week after. Not sure what. Maybe we'll do something smaller like Lynx, because in March we're taking on. I know we've got the Messier Marathon, but I'm taking on Ursa Major for 2 weeks. We're going to go slowly with that one. There's so many stories, so it's a big one. So maybe we'll do a couple of smaller ones first when I get back. But I'm always on Twitter updating what we're going to do, and I always place it in the discussions board as well. So keep an eye on that if you're interested. You can always email me at helen@slooh.com if you want any sources or information about the things we've gone through this evening. I welcome that. Otherwise, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. But Slooh's got tons of stuff for you in the meantime. Dr. Paige Godfrey is here with FRBs on Wednesday. So don't miss that one. It's not aliens after all, but what are these sounds, these fast radio bursts that are coming through? So that's be really fun to hang out with Dr. Paige Godfrey on Wednesday. And Paul Cox is back next Sunday, 7:30, with his practical astronomy. I don't know if you listened like I did to him tonight, but it's so helpful and so wonderful. And he's a great storyteller as well. So that's it from me. I wish you a beautiful week, and I hope you get really clear skies, and that we get clear skies in Chile and Canary Islands so we can book a ton of missions this week and see as many galaxies as we can. So good evening, and I'll speak to you soon.